Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I think that's what people say on here, right? I don't know. My hair is kind of a mess. I just have it up in a clip right now, so apologies. I don't know if you care about that thing. Today I'm going to be using the colored Raine Queen of Hearts palette, which is really one of my favorite makeup palettes, eyeshadow palettes rather. I feel like not a lot of people talk about how great colored Raine is, so they're awesome. They're Black owned and you should support them. And the topic I'm going to be doing my makeup to, if you will, is emotional labor, which I do a lot of with my work with Guerrilla Feminism, and sorry, my allergies are bad, so I might be sniffling off and on throughout this video. But yeah, it's something I do a lot of. It's something that a lot of women and non-binary folks do, gender non-conforming folks have to do, and it's really exhausting. So, you know, there's been a lot of, you'll see sort of people talk about how like, well, you should pay me for my emotional labor, and a lot of people who don't understand that think it's ridiculous to ask for payment for that, but those are the people who don't know how fucking exhausting it actually is. So I'm gonna get into what it is, all of that stuff, why you should pay for it if you can, at least sometimes, right? And yeah, I think that's sort of how things will go. I already have my foundation, concealer, eyebrows done, and I will leave the product info below. So I will get into the eyeshadow look. I'm gonna try to go for like a pink, yeah, pink purpley look, eye look today. So let's get started. So what is emotional labor? For the definition, I'm going to be heavily relying on Geek Feminism's definition, so if you'd like to check that out, I'll leave the link below. But they refer to it as tasks that require a high degree of understanding or management of emotions. Women are disproportionately believed to be good at these tasks as a function of their gender, regardless of their actual skill or willingness. We know how that goes. The tasks are also commonly extra or undervalued for the amount of actual labor or time spent on them, and left out of official job descriptions or task assignments, even when the function is vital to the organization. So you might be thinking, okay, what the fuck does that mean? Like, what types of tasks? So Geek Feminism has a list, which is really great. Teaching a new skill without making the learner feel bad about not having already known it. So that's emotional labor. Understanding a particular user's perspective, explaining a particular user's perspective to a teammate, conflict resolution or mediation in the workplace. A lot of people don't think that that is emotional labor, but if you think about it, and if you've had to do it, you know it fucking is, and it sucks, right? Conflict resolution or mediation, I just said that. Emotional canary, and that's in quotes, so conflict resolution, it's a type, sensing an impending conflict before it arrives, and mediating it before it becomes a larger issue. That's something I have to do a lot with Guerrilla Feminism. Anytime I post something that I know is gonna hit a nerve with people, whether that are, you know, like recently I posted another men are trash kind of memes, and I knew that was gonna blow up, right? Like, or same with if I post something vegan related, that always blows up in my face. So I have to really be sort of like hyper aware of like and I have to, you know, understand that what reaction people are going to have before they have it. Moderation. So, and I'll get into this in a second, but I'm gonna start my makeup look now. So, I will get into the moderation though piece in a second, because man, man, do I do a lot of that. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take the color Heir, which is like I mean, it's a very pale color. I'm using a MAC brush that I forgot I even had, which is like kind of pathetic because I should remember this shit, right? Because shit is expensive. So I'm just gonna kind of do this in my crease and use it as like a transition shade. And it's pretty light on me. I mean, it's a very light color, but I think it might show up better on paler skinned folks. I have an olive skin tone, so this color, I kind of have to really build it up for it to actually show up on my skin. But it's pretty color. So I stopped at moderation because I wanted to really get into that with you all, because if you don't know, I will let you know that moderation is a huge chunk of time that I choose to do for Guerrilla Feminism. I mean, I really am somebody who believes that you can't possibly call yourself a safe space, an online safe space, or an online safer space if you don't have moderation. There are a lot of online spaces that think that they're safe spaces, and they use that term to try to kind of attract people. And the problem with that is if you're not moderating the comments that are coming in, then no, you're not a safer space. You're just not. So I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand, especially with like doing emotional labor on the internet. And as you know, as I've said before, I always have to go a bit higher with my eyeshadow since I have hooded eyes. So if you have hooded eyes, I would recommend doing the same so that our looks actually get seen and they're not just, they don't just disappear, right? So when we talk about moderation, like recently, I'm trying to remember which post this was, but recently I posted something and there were over 1,000 comments. And damn straight, I went through all of those fucking comments to moderate. And it never fails when I see other people commenting and I'm like, please read the comments. I've already explained this, or someone else has already explained it, etc. And then someone says to me, well, why would I do that? There's like 1,000 comments here. Well, I fucking had to do that. So, I mean, sorry, but that's what I spend a big chunk of my time doing, is moderating comments. And it takes a hell of a lot of emotional labor. It's not a fun time, but I do it because I'm trying to, continue creating a safer space on the internet, which is not an easy feat to do. And it goes unnoticed a lot of the time, which is really fucking annoying. Anyways, so now I'm gonna go in with Princess on top of Heir, which Princess is like a pale pink. And I'm gonna use the same brush, use my little compact, my little gold compact. So I'm just doing this again, like right on top. So hopefully you can see, I just did Heir and Princess in the sort of crease area of my eyes. And now I'm gonna go on to, wait, what am I gonna do? Ladyship, yes. So Ladyship is this purple color, it's so pretty. And I'm gonna do that in the outer corner. So make it pretty dark there. I think I'm gonna use, oh God, what brush I think maybe I'll use this brush. I don't know. It's some Sephora brush I have. It's a pro shader. I don't know. I'm not a makeup artist. Anyways, we were talking about moderation. Comments and moderating all of that fun stuff, right? So that's something that largely, as I said, takes up a lot of my fucking time. But again, I mean, I do it to myself because I claim and I refer to GF as a safer space, right? And that's all fun and great, but if you're not actually doing the work for that, then you can't really call it that, you know? So, but at the same time, then, you know, you do all this work and it's emotional labor, but then people don't actually see it as such, which is really frustrating. And I'm still trying to figure out how to actually get people to, like, understand that that's actual emotional labor and it's work and it takes time away from other areas of my life, right? And if you do this work too, then you know that. So emotional labor also, you know, we need to talk about how women of color specifically are tasked with doing a lot of emotional labor. I am a white woman, and for me to, for example, if I were to just like, you know, contact a woman of color online or even or in person too, we can talk about too, like if I'm just like, hey, so why, like, tell me why, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Tell me why something, I don't know, like some aspect of really anything, because if you're specifically, you have to recognize the power dynamics. If you're a white person and you're going up to a person of color and you're kind of demanding their time and their emotional labor to explain something to you, you probably shouldn't do that, right? Like, that's kind of a shit thing to do. And you see that a lot, I'm sure, in person, but you also see it a lot on the internet, right? Just even on Twitter, like, women of color get asked various questions from people, and specifically white people who don't want to do the work or don't want to look it up themselves, or just don't, again, don't see them asking as emotional labor. They don't see it as laborious for a woman of color to have to talk about, like, why something's offensive, or, you know, why we shouldn't be doing something in a certain way, or why we should be doing it in this way, etc. You know, that's a huge fucking problem, and you need to really be aware of that. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't aware of that. So that's kind of where, that's why too, you know, if you are a white person and you are wanting to learn something from a person of color, or you know, want them to explain something to you and take their time to do so and have to potentially for them to re-traumatize themselves, whatever the, you know, potential subject matter is, like, you should pay them, you know? That's right, like, that's, you should do that, right? So moderation is one we just talked about. This is looking kind of, I don't know. Community management. So again, you know, I think about this in terms of online communities, of course, because that's where I mostly do. I think, you know, I would say most of my emotional labor comes out of that. However, you know, we can talk about interpersonal relationships too, right? Like those of us who are in relationships with people, like, or dating people, or even platonic, you know, just friendships. Like, Are you like having to do more emotional labor with your friend or with your significant other for some reason? Why is that? Like, are you the one who's always listening to them and, you know, listening to them talk about their problems or their, you know, what's going on in their life, and they don't listen to you and they're not at all there for you with that stuff? That's shitty. And that's, you know, very disproportionate and not okay. So if that's something that's happening, you know, try to talk to that person. That's what I would recommend. Of course, this is somewhat easier to do, I think, when it's somebody you're in a relationship with or, you know, friends with, versus if it's a work situation, because that's like a whole different can of worms. Because then, you know, there's that whole like professionalism and just other avenues that you kind of have to deal with, and potential ramifications that you have to, you know, deal with too, which is shitty. But alas, that is the world we live in, right? So now I am going to go back in with Princess, which is that pale pink. I'm going to use the same brush, but I'm going to, again, just kind of blend out this area. So now I'm going to go in with Duchess, which is a dark brown right there. And I'm just going to kind of put that over, what was it? Ladyship. Yeah, that purple sort of on the outer corner. Oof, that's very dark and very pigmented. See, I'm telling you, colored Raine is amazing. Like, I'm gonna have to clean this shit up because that's more dark than I thought it was gonna be. So the other on this list too, about like various tasks that are considered emotional labor, writing an apology, interestingly. I mean, because whether or not, you know, it's an apology that's, you know, deserved and you should apologize, like, yeah, that's gonna take up your emotional labor, right? Like, for better or for worse, that's gonna take up some of your you know, needing to have to manage not only your emotions but somebody else's within an apology. And again, regardless of whether the apology is, you know, deserved or not. So the next one on here is customer service. Hello, emotional labor. Like, that's a huge one. Anybody who has worked in customer service knows how how much emotional labor goes into customer service, right? I mean, I worked, let's see, so I worked in a call center. I worked at Macy's a long time ago, and like all of that shit, like, you have to do so much emotional labor. People, you know, you have to really like take care of people's feelings in those positions. And it's really fucking annoying because, you know, there's of course that whole, that motto, the customer's always right, which no, they're not. First of all, let's put that to bed right now. They're not always right. Especially when they are sexist and racist and yelling at you on the fucking phone. Which has happened to me. The sexism part anyways, and the yelling. But yeah, like that's why if you work in the service industry, you know, you already don't make that much money, and then you have people just shit on you all the time. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's not okay. And again, it's something that a lot of people just kind of don't think about. People who aren't in that situation, they don't think about that, like, oh yeah, like, this sucks for this person. Like, you know, they have a lot of shit they have to deal with day in and day out. When I worked in a call center, I came home crying every day. not just because of the like customers I had to deal with, but also just because, you know, the management was fucking terrible. The people who didn't have to answer the phones, you know, didn't understand like how shitty it was to have to answer the phones and be yelled at, when shit was not your problem to begin with, you know? So think about that next time you know, are pissed off at somebody that you're gonna, you know, like, that you're gonna call, at a call center. Think about not yelling at those people. Maintaining a pleasant, unruffled facade while performing external facing duties, and maintaining a pleasant, unruffled facade while performing internal facing duties. So again, we can think about this in, you know, a few different ways. We can think about it within our workspaces. We can think about it within our interpersonal relationships as well. Whatever tasks are going to, you know, the saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. Whatever tasks that are going to diminish your own emotionality or your own, you know, inner resources, like that is emotional labor. It's laborious, and it's hard to replenish yourself, especially when you have to do it day in and day out. And that's, I think, one of the things that makes it really difficult on people is that it's like when you have to do this work daily, it's like you never get a rest. You never get replenished fully because you're doing this every fucking day, right? Building design personas, I'm not sure what that means, but brushing off insensitive or cruel behavior from others because they, quote, can't be expected to behave better. We hear that a lot, or we see that a lot with men. You know, the old saying, boys will be boys. Same kind of thing here, right? Like, which really does a disservice to men and boys by saying that, because it's really sort of excusing any behavior that is not, you know, decent behavior, right? Like, whereas for women, like, we very much know what we are supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do, and we can still, though, of course, get in trouble for either, because hello, double bind situation. But with, you know, men and boys, like, they are really given an out with a lot of things, which doesn't help them either. So I don't know, if you're watching this and if you're a dude, you should think about that shit and see where that happens in your life, you know, like, see where you kind of are allowed to get away with shit because of male privilege or whatever, you know. The next one on here is acting as a counselor or therapist for others without pay or qualifications. And that is one that I think women specifically deal with all the damn time, specifically from men, right? Like, we listen to men's problems, whether they are men in our lives, personally or professionally. We consistently have to do that work of listening, active listening, reassurance, taking care of men's emotions, right? And so that can be, again, really exhausting, and when you're not getting paid for it, it feels really diminishing and, again, like, invalidating of the fact that it's actual work, right? So I'll move on to the next shade, next color that I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna put Queen Mother. Where the fuck is Queen Mother? That purple shimmer shade in the center of my eyes. let's see, the next one on here is pretending as though everything is fine when everything is in fact not fine. Women get made fun of a lot for that, and it's honestly something we've been told to do in life. Like, that's kind of what you're taught, right? As a woman, like, oh, like, don't make shit a big deal, just kind of like, you know, just go along with the things, like, don't rock the boat. And that's really shitty. And we're all, I think, brought up to think that, or to, you know, again, yeah, to just, to not voice what's really going on or what's wrong. And so, Geek Feminism, excuse me, has a list of excuses on here too, which I think are really great, because when you hear these, you'll be like, oh fuck, yeah, that's pretty damn familiar. So the first one is, women are naturally good at this, right? Like, we hear that all the time, as a reason to continue to do emotional labor without any sort of, you know, without any sort of payment or recognition. Others are, no one else has time. Of course, we all have time, right? No, we don't. It's not like it's real work. That one bugs me so much. Because guess what? It is real work, and it's fucking hard work that most people don't want to do, and that's why we are often tasked with doing it. So it is work. Please know that if you do this work, it's work. So I'm just sort of blending out Queen Mother, that purple glimmery. I'm gonna have to clean these sides up, but I'll do that a little bit later on. But if you don't do it, nobody else will. That's another thing people say, and so then that's like an added guilt trip, right, on us, to be like, well, if we don't do it, no one else is gonna do it, or shit's not gonna get done, or whatever, and then it's gonna be our fault, right? We couldn't possibly replace you if you left us. It's another thing people like to say when they're using you. It's not possible to teach skills like that. It very much is possible to teach skills like that. You can teach people about emotional labor and how to effectively do it, right? So saying something like that is purely because people just don't think it's valid or real, or they just don't want to actually take the time to do it. So we know. Oh, do we know? So now I'm going to use MAC Hypnotizing Frost in, well, it's in Hypnotizing. It's an eyeshadow. It's a light purple. I should probably open up the case. Light purple. I'm going to put that in the inner corner of my eyes. All right, so I have that MAC Hypnotizing Frost in the inner corner. So yeah, going for sort of an ombre look. I still need to kind of clean some of this up, and I will do that at some point. So what is next? I've received a lot of questions, specifically on talking about how to set boundaries for your emotional labor with other people. So I want to get into that. There's so much I want to get into about this topic, but I don't want this video to be like 5 hours long. So I might not get a chance to talk directly about everything, so keep that in mind. We can always talk more about this on GF too. So I'm gonna next do the underneath part of my eyes. So I'm gonna go back in with Heir and just kind of sweep that underneath. The other thing, let's see, what else did I want to talk about? These are some good questions that the orbit.net have up for, to sort of see and inquire within yourself, like, you know, am I doing a lot of emotional labor? So they have them broken up. I'll leave the link to this too below, but they have them broken up into partnered life, friend groups. So I'm just gonna read a few of these because there's quite a few. And God, see, I really have to build up this damn color because it's kind of fucking pale. So the first is, am I checking in with my partner to see if they had a rough day? If so, am I stepping up to make their life easier in other ways, cooking, cleaning, etc.? Am I actively trying to make my presence feel safe for my partner? So these are all questions you can ask yourself within your relationships. With your friend groups, they have questions like, do I work to coordinate people's schedules so that we can have a nice night together? When planning an event, am I conscious of possible interpersonal conflicts? Third-party relationships, do I remember to make phone calls and visits to people I care about and want to have relationships with? Etc. So like, ask yourself those questions. You know, do you do that? Does your partner, do your friends do that as well? Is it equal? Is it even? I think that's one of the biggest things, is most of the time it's not, and that's makes us feel really shitty, right? Okay, I think, oh God, I just like stabbed myself in the eye. That was not fun. So then I'm gonna go in with, let's see, actually, no, I'm not gonna do that just yet. I'm gonna go in with, oh gosh, goodness, Princess again, which is that pale pink. And again, just kind of go under my lashes. There's also a really great article about what's it worth to you. Charging for emotional labor is an inherently feminist act. So I'll link that below too. That's up on Medium. It's a really great article. Basically, as you can tell with the title, it makes the case for why you should charge for your emotional labor. I mean, and I'm not saying that, like, you know, you need to do that with everybody or like with friends or whomever, but you know, like strangers or people you don't know who act like they, I mean, you could charge friends and family, fuck, you know, you do you, but you know, I think the biggest thing, at least for me, is it doesn't have to be, we don't have to talk about, you know, monetary amounts potentially, although that is nice, but it's also just like, people need to recognize and support that emotional labor is work and it takes a lot of fucking effort, and many of us do it every fucking day for nothing. So there needs to be like some acknowledgement at the very least that what we're doing is work and that it's hard and it's valued and it's valid, all of those things. Okay, so I'm gonna do, I just put Princess underneath as well. So now I'm going to put Ladyship, that purple color again, in the outer corner. Kind of bring it in center a bit. Ta-da! So in terms of, I think, okay, the biggest question I was asked with how can I set up boundaries for emotional labor? So I want to get into that because I feel like a lot of people have asked me that. And again, not like I am the go-to, you know, for this. I mean, I know some stuff about it, but I definitely am still learning too. So please keep that in mind. So I'll get into that in just a second. So I just put Ladyship in the outer corner. I'm going to now put, like we did on top, Duchess, that brown color. Again, kind of just building up Just doing the same kind of thing that we did on top. I really need to get like a better camera situation here someday, because my iPhone only has so much memory, and then I have to like make sure that it hasn't stopped recording, so that I haven't lost y'all someday. Okay, so Duchess, back to hypnotizing. I just realized though too that you could use, instead of hypnotizing, you could use the color Royal Highness in the color Raine palette. It's like the same exact color as the MAC color I used. So I think I'm just gonna use that because fuck it. It's like the same color and I had no idea. Just realized that. So I'm gonna do that in the inner corner on the bottom. So what you can do to create boundaries, I'm still figuring this out for myself because my God, it's really fucking hard. And you're not really taught this, you know? You're taught to just do the emotional labor. You're not taught how to actually set up boundaries or how to stop, like cut off emotional labor from people if that's what you want to do too. And so that's really shitty that we're not taught that, right? Now I'm going to just put a little bit of Crown, that white color, it's very white, in my inner eyes. And I'm gonna do eyeliner and mascara and it'll be done. It'll be a look, maybe, I don't know. I'm always like, how does this look okay? Like, I don't know. I'm not like super exact with any of this shit, as you probably can tell. I'm also gonna just kind of put some of this color here to highlight my brow, as people do, right? That's a thing. I know it's a thing. Ta-da! All right, so I will be back in a second. I'm going to do liquid eyeliner and mascara, and I will be back after that to talk about boundaries. So I forgot, I was going to put in Urban Decay's 24/7 Glide On Eye Pencil in Alkaline in my waterline, and so I didn't do that yet, so I'm gonna do that. And we're gonna talk briefly here about boundaries setting for emotional labor. So this is just like a purple, magenta-ish, pretty eyeliner. So boundaries, what can we do to help with the stress of emotional labor, and how can we set up boundaries? For me, you know, I'm pretty bad at this, to be honest. Like I said, I'm still kind of learning, and I wish I was better at this shit. I'm not. But I mean, one thing that I try to do is tell people, specifically people in my life, because I know they'll listen more than people on the internet. I try to tell people, like, you know, I'm sorry, I can't, you know, this is the thing too, is you shouldn't apologize, and I'm still working on that. But I try to just say to people, like, look, like, I understand that you are wanting this help from me, or whatever it might be, or you want to learn more about this, etc. But I just can't at this moment attend to you. Most people, I feel like, in your personal life will understand that and not give you shit for that. If they do, fuck them. But that's harder to do with people online, because people online don't really give a fuck, because they most of the time don't see you as a person. At least they don't to me. They don't see me as a person. But one thing you can also kind of, you know, tell people is just like, you know, you need a break, and you can reiterate, you know, sort of what emotional labor is, but that's also kind of emotional labor now that I'm thinking about it. So what might be a better way to work with it is to actually send articles to people about emotional labor and be like, hey, PS, like, this is what's being asked of me, and, you know, it's labor, and it's labor that I'm unable or unwilling to give at the current time, or whatever it might be. This can be really hard, especially, you know, especially, I don't know, it can be hard, I guess, I'd say, in personal relationships and in professional relationships, right? Because you don't know what the ramifications might be. Somebody, you know, especially with work situations, like, it's hard to really say that, right? Because you have to fear, like, am I gonna lose my job? Like, you know, specifically if like the emotional labor you do at work is like for your boss, like, how are you gonna say that to your boss? Like, look, I just can't right now, okay? So you really kind of have to think about it. I'm sorry if this is bouncy. I'm like on my bed because this is the only space that I can really do makeup stuff in. You really kind of have to think about it, and look at it in layers, and that can again be more laborious, right? Imagine that. I really kind of went wild with my wings here, so apologies, but I don't know, I think it turned out okay. You can also ask people in your life to take responsibility for their emotions. And that also can be hard. But if they, you know, if they're really your friend, if they're really your partner, etc., they should also care about you. They should give a shit about you and your well-being, and they should want to help replenish you and not diminish you, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think that's all of this stuff is really difficult in practice to talk about with people. And part of that is because it's not seen as valuable or valid for what it is, right? For being actual labor. It's also, emotional labor requires you to be vulnerable, and asking also for setting boundaries, that requires you to be vulnerable as well, right? Because you have to actually, you know, step up for yourself and say, look, this is not good for me, I can't do this, or I have to do it in a different way, etc. And that's really hard to do, but you have to do it because you really, I've said this I think on another video, you really have to take care of yourself above anybody else. That's not selfish, because, you know, first of all, if it is selfish, who the fuck cares? But it's not selfish, because you can't possibly take care of anybody else or help anybody else if you yourself are not taken care of. And you know more than anybody else what you need and what works for you. And so you have to be that person, right, who can take care of yourself and give yourself what you need and deserve and advocate for yourself. And again, I'm not saying that's not hard. It's totally fucking hard to do that. But it's a really worthwhile practice to do and to start doing, especially when you're young, because you can get into the habit of doing that. So just know that, like, this is a process like anything else. And yes, I took my hair down. And it's not going to be perfect. It's going to take time, and, you know, finding out your boundaries specifically might, you know, that might look different than somebody else's, and that's okay. And you might not know what those are yet, and that's okay too. You have to kind of take the time to navigate and move through and figure that out for yourself. So before I end, I want to just mention I used Makeup Forever's mascara, Kat Von D's liner, which I'm not a huge fan of her, so nobody come for me, please. I used MAC's Spice lip pencil for my lips, and then I used Libra by Black Moon Cosmetics, and oh, I used Bare Minerals blush, and I put on some Anastasia Glow Kit Sweets in Marshmallow, this white. So that's my look. I think I might go in with my Black Moon Cosmetics Luna Topper to make my lips a little bit sparkly, but I'm still thinking about that. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this episode. I'm gonna splash myself with some rose water because why the fuck not? Oh my god, it's so good. And it's cheap too. This stuff is the shit. I'll link the articles below and products I'll talk about below too. Please subscribe, please follow me on Guerrilla Feminism on Instagram and Facebook. I'm on Twitter as LaCrista Greco. Write to me if you want, my P.O. box is beneath. And yeah, just remember to take care of yourself. Don't feel bad, or try not to feel bad anyways. If you need to tell somebody like, look, no more emotional labor, bye. That's okay. If they don't understand, then you don't want that person in your life. And I know that's easier said than done, especially if it's family members or, you know, close friends, etc. But yeah, just do what you can do. And I will leave you with that. Bye. Thanks for watching.